Welcome to the Living Well Church podcast, and thanks for tuning in today. Our mission as a church is to help people find faith in Jesus and a life of purpose and hope. You're about to watch a message that will challenge you, inspire you, encourage you, and most of all, point you to Jesus and the life of purpose and hope He has planned for you. So lean in and enjoy, and let God speak into your life.
As you're all now aware, this is my first time preaching. It's my first time preaching here, and it's actually my first time preaching anywhere. And I couldn't really have asked for a better subject to start on than how awesome is my God. And to be able to tell that through my testimony is even better, because it lets me be able to tell you guys how I got where I am, what my journey looked like, and then as a church, you know where I am. So I was born into this church back when we went Lyddon, and all of my family is involved with the church in some way. My mum is Katie, and she's on the preaching team as well. If you've been here before, you'll have undoubtedly spoken to her, because that's what she does. She talks to everyone and everyone, anywhere you go. You can just be anywhere around with her, she'll talk to someone, or they'll talk to her. She's a nightmare. And then there's my dad as well, Richard. Everyone says that I look like him, but he's fatter and older looking than me. He works tirelessly behind the scenes, he's involved on the sound desk, and he also leads us around the communion table as well. And my grandparents, Colin, who's led us in communion this morning, has been a massive part of my Christian life, but I'll get into more of that later. And also my nan, Olive, who is definitely where my mum gets her ability to talk from. They're both as bad as each other. So from the very beginning of my life, before I was even born, there's people praying and contending for me. And in Ephesians 6, it tells parents to raise their children in the training and instruction of the Lord. And I was never lacking in that. When I was quite young, under the age of 5, there was a big thunderstorm, and I was very afraid. I told my mum this, and I said I didn't know what to do, and I was worried what would happen if I died. So she explained to me, if I became a Christian, gave my heart to the Lord, that I wouldn't need to be worried, because I'd be going to heaven if I died. And that day, I became a Christian, and haven't really ever not been a Christian since. And that day was really key. So if you're a parent, don't forget that. Don't forget that no matter how young or how little they might seem to know, it's never too young to tell them about the love of God. And ever since that day, there's been times when I may not have looked like a Christian, where if you followed me from a Sunday as I left church through to the following Sunday when I came to church, my life wouldn't have looked any different to anyone else's. There's two things that I thought I had right in this. And first was my language. I never swore. There was never any swear words used at home or around me, and I never picked it up as a habit. And because of this, I thought it set me apart from everyone else and made me different. I thought that people would recognise me as a Christian because I wasn't using these swear words. And in Luke 6, verse 45, it tells us that the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And for a long time, that meant putting a friend down. And this isn't easy to say at all, especially because he's actually come here today to support me. So for a long time, I'd tell him how stupid it was, how his ideas were rubbish, and the one I used most, and was my favourite, was that he was a drain on society. And most of the time, these conversations would come when we were at the pub, which was one of the other things that I thought right. I thought I had a really good relationship with alcohol. There was times when I would drink up to 7 nights a week, and rarely less than 4 or 5 nights a week. And actually, I thought this was okay, because I was rarely drunk. And whilst I was doing this, I was going to these pubs and drinking, and I was showing people that Christians can go, they can enjoy drink, and still be normal people. And I thought I was taking light into these dark places. But actually, I wasn't. I was doing the opposite. I was letting darkness into my life. And in 2 Corinthians 6, it tells us that light and darkness cannot coexist, and that as Christians, we're set apart to be different. So you might be wondering when all this started to change, or even if it did. And about 18 months ago, it did start to change, fortunately. I joined our local Burn team. So Burn, if you don't know what it is, we hold it once a month here, every second Friday. We do 12 hours of continuous worship. So we start Friday at 8 p.m, and we go through the night till Saturday at 8 a.m. Now, it is a great time. It's just 12 hours where you can come and you can worship and just be in the presence of God. And as part of the team, they started talking about David's tent, which is like a Burn, except it's 3 days long, 72 hours long, and it's got some big worship leaders there. So last year they had Tim Hughes, a couple of the guys from Bethel, and also the Houses. So they were really keen for me to go along with them because a lot of the other people on the team were going as well. I thought it sounded pretty good, sounded quite fun, until they told me which weekend it was. It was the bank holiday weekend in August, and then I didn't really want to go. I had a really good weekend lined up. On the Saturday, it was the second to last day of our cricket season, and if we won that game and results went our way, then we'd be promoted. So there was no way I was going to miss that. And then the following Sunday, we had a 2020 tournament as well, which we always hosted, and I was not going to miss that because that suits my game nicely and is always fun. And then the Monday, on what would have been the last day, we always go to a military history show, and it was my birthday. So I decided at this point, no way I was going to go. I wasn't going to miss these 3 things for anything. Oh, and to top it all off, David's tent means you have to camp. And camping is one of my least favourite things to do. There's nothing I would want to camp for. But yet, somehow, on the week of the event, on the Tuesday, I found myself at lunch on my phone buying a ticket to go. And at the time, it just felt completely random. And I didn't actually know why I was doing it. And then the Friday came. I was going to head off straight after work, but I had to wait a couple of hours for some people to go up with. And I went and stayed the 3 days, and I experienced the joy and freedom in worship I'd never felt before. I was there with 4,000 other people who were there just to worship. And most of all, there's probably only 4 people there that knew me, and only one of them actually who knew me well. So when I was there, I wasn't Katie's son. I wasn't having to worry about doing the words or waiting for the red banner to come up for the kids' work for me to go out. And it was great. And then as we came back, I thought that was it, that I was set, that I'd reached the pinnacle of my relationship with God. But he actually had more still in plan for me. So 2 weeks later, our life group and the youth group had organised a Holy Spirit evening. It was just an evening. We had someone outside come to lead us in worship. There was just going to be a space to sing, to worship, to be prayed for, and to pray. And then quite near the beginning of the evening, as we were just sort of being led in worship, my mum had a prophecy, which she didn't like. She didn't want to give because it was for me. So she resisted and resisted bringing it. And she waited and waited. And then she talked to Joe about it. She prayed with Joe, and they prayed because they didn't want to come and give this to me if it wasn't for me. And he agreed with her that it was for me. So she came and she gave it to me. And it was something along the lines of that I would receive generational blessings. That my mother is a preacher, my granddad was a pastor, and my great-granddad was a pastor. But I would reach more people than they did combined, and I would go further than all of them did combined. Which is a pretty full-on thing to receive from your own mother. So with that at the back of my mind, I thought maybe then one day I might be a preacher. And it's something that's always been there, sort of dwelling. Because when I was a lot younger, my granddad, he took me to Charles Wesley's pulpit as I was a baby. And as he held me in his arms, he prayed and prophesied over me that I would be a preacher. And he'd often remind me of this. But usually I'd just put it down to the ramblings of an old man. But actually, that day was so important. Because that day he spoke into life something which we're now seeing the realization of today. Now, if that wasn't enough for one night, they also made space towards the end of the evening for people to be prayed for so they could speak in tongues. Now, I was there as an older person, and I thought maybe some of the youth group might even be silly enough to look up to me. So I decided, as I was saying this, that I would be one of the first people to go and be prayed for, just so that people felt more comfortable doing it. So I went without much expectation again, and I was prayed for, and I was able to speak and worship in tongues, and I found a pure and wonderful worship I'd never experienced before. Now, at this point, fortunately, there was starting to be some changes in my life. And in fact, the church and the leadership recognised this, because they asked me and Luke to take over our life group. Now, I thought this was good. Seemed like the right path to be on. I could spend a couple of years doing Bible studies, maybe some communion a few times, maybe some youth events. Then maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, I'll be ready to start preaching. That didn't quite go as to plan. But it was at this point I decided then, if I was going to be leading a life group and doing Bible studies, I should read my Bible more often. So I was going to get up half an hour earlier each day and read my Bible for that time. Which sounds really easy, right? Except it didn't really happen. In fact, it probably didn't happen at all. At the time, I had a pretty bad relationship with sleep, and I was nearly always tired. Ever since I've been young, since around the age of 10 or 11, I would get really bad night terrors. So a couple of times, maybe once, twice a week, I'd be there laying asleep, and in my dreams, I'd be convinced someone was breaking into my room, trying to kill me or steal things from me or just generally hurt me. And then I'd wake up pumped full of adrenaline and not be able to go back to sleep. Now, as grim as it does sound, there are some funny stories that came from it. So when I was living with Kirsten and Josh and Nathan, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was fast asleep, and so was everyone other than Nathan. And then all of a sudden, I saw these two guys climbing through my window. And as they came through my window, they drew out guns to shoot me. So I threw my bulletproof mattress at them, pushed them back, and then ran out of the room screaming and shouting and held the door closed, screaming for everyone to get out of the house because there's someone coming to kill us. So I stood there holding this door shut like this, and Kirsten and Nathan, I've been woken up by it, and they're trying to calm me down, telling me there's no one there. I was having none of it. It's about 5 minutes of them telling me it was fine. I went back into my room, and actually they were right. There was no one there. But I think the most amazing thing about that story is Josh was no more than 6 foot away the whole time and didn't once wake up. Now, it was at a burn meeting when I was telling one of these stories that Liz, who's on our burn team, said to me that they sounded like spiritual attacks, especially because I was saying that they always were worse than a week leading up to burn when I'd be trying to bank some sleep. Now, when she said this, I thought, maybe a bit of truth in that, and I started to think more and more about it. And then when we had a prayer meeting in April, we had set up different stations around the church for people to be prayed for gifts of the Spirit, and one of them at the back was for people who wanted the gift of discernment. And I thought, that's good. I can go and be prayed for, get the gift of discernment, and then I know if this is just me being crazy or if it is these spiritual attacks. Now, as I explained this to Beth and a couple of the others that were there, we skipped the discernment bit and we went straight to praying for healing. And since that day, I haven't had a single night terror. So you'd think then at this point, without that I'd start to sleep better and actually start to sleep well and be able to get up early with my Bible. But I still didn't. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I did it in that time. I just found other ways or other distractions to keep me up and doing whatever into the early hours of the morning. But still, God in his awesomeness found ways to take them away as well. And then every day since I came back from Hillside, I've been able to wake up early every morning and read my Bible. Now, Hillside is incredible. It was a 10-day intensive worship course. Now, if anyone knows me quite well, knows that singing, music aren't necessarily where my talents lie. So you might wonder how I found myself there. So Lysandre, who's our burn leader, had been the year before, and she was really keen for the rest of the team to go as well, because she's got so much from it. So she'd been telling us all year about it and how great it sounded. And I told her I sounded interested, and it sounded like something I'd want to go to, but I've actually never told her, so I had no intention of going. Up until around the Christmas time, when I started to think that God might be telling me I needed to be there. Now, I couldn't see anywhere of me going. I already had time booked off just before to go on holiday. So with that time booked off and the money I was spending on the holiday, there's no way I could afford it. So I said to God, in my stupidity, that if I needed to be there, then he'd have to make a way. And then not so long after that, my cousin Nathan got engaged, which was great. And then he asked me to be his best man, which was even better. And then he said that he was going to get married at the beginning of August, which meant then there's really only one time we could do the stag do, because he works in the school, the other best man works in the school, and one of the ushers works in the school. And it just happened I had that half-term week booked off. So all of a sudden, I wasn't going on holiday, and I had this money now available for Hillside. But still I wasn't convinced, so I thought I'd try and bargain with God again. And I said, okay, God, if this is really what you want, you've now got to make the time available as well. And then not long after that, I was at work, and one of my colleagues came up to me and said, Jack, I'm maid of honour at a wedding, but I can't go because it's a time you've got booked off, and we can't both be off at the same time. So I thought it was pretty clear now at this point, and I said to her, it's fine, I cancelled that week off, I'm not doing anything now anyway with it. So when I cancelled it, I put in a new request as well, and I thought I'd try and book off the time for Hillside. Now, I didn't expect to get the time off. There was a team of 16 or 17 of us, and only 2 people could be off at one time. So there's no way that 2 weeks in July would be free. But yet, still there was. So I got the 2 weeks off, and finally got around to booking the Hillside. Now, the 10 days I spent at Hillside were 10 of the best days of my life. And still even really, I can't put into words lots of it. The atmosphere that they were able to create there was incredible. Within a day or two, I trusted everyone there completely and loved every single one of them. And the same could be said for them. And because of this atmosphere that they created, everyone was able to experience God in new ways and in different ways, because everyone was there for the same reason. They had gone there to find out more of God and to find more of what he had in plan for their lives. Now, one guy who really embodied that was this guy called Luke. At first, I wasn't sure on him. He was Australian, and he looked pretty goofy. But actually, as we were talking on the first night, it was pretty good, because we were the only 2 people there of 20 that didn't have any musical talents. We couldn't really sing, we didn't play any instruments. And as we were talking, we said how cool it would be to be in the same little family groups during the week. But there's no way it could happen, because those groups would have to lead worship 3 or 4 times. And there's no way they'd put us with 2 or 3 other people and expect them to lead worship with us. But yet, in the morning after, as they're giving out the groups and saying who people were with, there we were together. And then later on in the week, when we asked Sarah, who was running it all, how that happened, because neither of us could do anything, she said that she was convinced he could play guitar and drums in his application form and play them to a high standard, which he couldn't. So with him, he was able to push me, encourage me, and so much more. We were part of a burn set at 3 o'clock in the morning where we both played drums. It was the most chaotic and wonderful hour and a half of worship you will ever hear. We had no idea what we were doing. We couldn't hear anything. We were behind everyone. The foldback didn't really work, and we just went with it. Now, that atmosphere was able to lead me so much deeper with God. And as we get bigger in church and on a Sunday morning, that's not something we can always maintain here. But that's why I think life groups are so key. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a life group leader. That space where you can go and meet with a few people, with friends and people you trust, can create those atmospheres where you can pray, be prayed for, and share the deepest things of your heart. So if you're not part of a life group, if you grab an info leaflet, it's got the information for them all in there, and you can talk to any of the leaders about that. Now, the other great thing about Hillside was on the second to last morning. We'd been led in a time of worship, and then one of the guys on staff called Alan, he stood up, and he stood there with his notes in front of him, and he sort of looked at them for a while, and then he stepped away from his notes and said, I don't need these this morning, because God's telling me to say this. Now, I'm going to paraphrase a bit, because I don't remember exactly, but he said that there's people here being prophesied over, have had things said about their lives, that they're not sure is for them, and they don't believe that words are for you. So I want you to stand up now and speak over your life, those things, and that you will do those, and you will believe in those, and that they are true. Now, as I sat there, I started to feel more and more uncomfortable. But I knew that this wasn't me. I knew the prophecies and the words that I had were definitely for me, and that I couldn't really avoid them. But still, I felt uncomfortable. And then Alan stood up again. I'll paraphrase him again. He said something along the lines of, there's people here who've had prophecies and words given to them, which they know are true, but they don't know how they can achieve them. They don't know how they can do them or what that looks like. And I knew straight away that that was me. And I stood up straight away and I spoke over those things. And for me, that's a big thing. Because I could tell you so many times when I've been sat down on a Sunday morning, making excuses after excuses as to why not to go forward to be prayed for, or I'd wait until the last call, or I'd just find enough reasons not to go and convinced it wasn't for me. That morning, I was certain. So I stood up and I declared over my own life that I would go further, that I would reach more people than my mother, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. And every day since then, I think I've finally been walking in God's plan. And each day has been awesome. And it's given me a new understanding of how awesome God is. And, you know, I think that morning was so important for a couple of reasons. But one of them was that certainty that it was me. And also that I stood up and made that actual movement. So if anything I've said this morning rings true in your life, it's something that you feel. There's something which Jean said earlier as well, which is great, because I changed my ending last night. And she brought that and it really confirmed it. If there's things that you're holding back from God, or there's things that you know you're doing wrong, then I just want you to stand with me, and together we'll declare over these things. So if you agree with something that's been said this morning, you want to do that now, if you just want to stand and repeat after what I say. So, I will not be afraid, because I know you are an awesome God. I will leave behind the things that separate me from you. And in the middle of the storms and the valleys of this life, I will walk in your plan for me. Now, I can't promise you that you'll go home today and everything will change, or that it'll be easy, or that there won't be spiritual attacks on you. But I can tell you that you'll go home and you'll have a new understanding of how awesome God is and what a difference that will make in your lives.